What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow. So today we are back with our last podcast episode of Survivor Season 45. The finale happened this past week. So my name is Rachel.
I'm Alyssa, and in addition to this being the last podcast of Survivor 45, it's also the last podcast of the year. Who's hype?
Wow. Yeah. I'm like, Christmas is Monday, and then New Year's is the Monday after. 2023 has flown by very, very fast. So I'm shocked.
For sure. But I feel like the finale of Survivor 45 was a great way to kind of get started in the holidays. I feel like it was a great finale. I felt satisfied with it, and it was the end of a pretty good Survivor season.
I agree. I think overall season 45 has been really fun. A lot of people saying the best season of the new era thus far. I think I've maybe had the most fun recapping this one with you, Alyssa. And yeah, with the finale, this was the first time Alyssa and I could text during the episode, I think, in a long time.
I think we actually texted during the finale of 43 because we were talking about Gabler winning. So,
Yeah. Guess at least a year, which is crazy.
yep, for sure.
So we start off this episode similar like to the new era. You get a challenge advantage at the start of the finale episode. For their challenge advantage, they had to run and count objects. You get the numbers for a combination. For me, I was glad that they had to run back and forth to recount if one of their numbers was incorrect, because I could totally see a scenario where you're maybe like one off. So instead of doing, okay, I checked number 45, then let me check 46, 44, 43, 47, and just keep spinning the wheels and then eventually get it right. So I'm glad that they forced them to run and not just you can keep guessing numbers.
For sure. The one thing about this challenge that really confused me was Dee and Austin working together because I was like, only one of you gets the advantage. Like, what's going on here? Like, Dee had a confessional where she was talking about them working together, and I thought she was gonna say something like, "But I'm not telling him the real answer." And then she was like, "It's just so nice that we're working together." And I was like, "What's going on here?"
Yeah, that is interesting. Like, if they had the numbers correct the quickest, who would be able to pull the sword out? Like, would D let Austin have it? Would Austin let D have it? If you're working together, like, sure, it's smart to double check because they had like 42 versus 43. One person had miscounted, and then you could bounce the numbers off of each other. But yeah, who gets the actual advantage at the end of the day here?
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter that much because neither of them were the ones who got it right. Jake got it right. I watched this finale episode with my sister who has not seen a single episode of the rest of this season, but she was watching Jake talk about all of the different survivor winners because the way that who he remembered the numbers was by who won which season of Survivor, which was so cute. And my sister looks at Jake and she goes, "That's a nerd." So Survivor nerd all the way.
Oh my gosh, yeah, for people who haven't seen other seasons, Jake just spoiled 3.
Yeah, but I mean, hopefully I feel like you can't get mad about spoilers when it's been 10, 15 years since some of them. Like, maybe you can get mad about him spoiling Gabler's season, but I feel like the other two, it's like, if you haven't watched those by now, that's your own fault. That's not Jake's fault.
No, I agree. I think it reminds me of I think Australian Survivor, like one season and like the first 90 seconds spoiled the previous season that had just aired. So it's like, okay, if you missed last season, you just got spoiled of who the winner last season was this season.
Yeah. I know some people were mad when the winners at Warcast was announced because they're like, I didn't watch all of these seasons yet, and now I know who wins. And I'm like, besties, the title is Winners at War. Like, that's a you problem, not a Survivor problem. So,
No, literally, like how I don't know, Winners at War, it's like okay. And then if they do like an all winners other TV shows, it's if you're going to watch, it's sort of expected you would get spoiled or you have to avoid it until you just Google, like, okay, like I've seen on Reddit people ask, like, which season should I watch in order to prepare for Winners at War? Don't tell me who wins, just give me the list of the numbers of the people participating and just don't look at the cast.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jake got it right. Survivor here is probably loving his remember numbers strategy because then they could flash back to those other winners.
Yeah, I feel like Survivor loves a good flashback. They did one earlier this season with like Rob and Amber. So I feel like they loved being able to flash back to the other seasons of Survivor and kind of do a like pat on the back of themselves. So Jake wins the advantage. We all cheer.
Yeah, I feel like with this, you'd rather be slow and correct with your numbers rather than fast and wrong. I think Jake had a good strategy. Like, you might as well spend more time counting than be wrong and have to run back and forth a ton of times.
Especially on the like last couple days of the season when you're sleep deprived, food deprived, like running back and forth is hard.
Yeah, so good for Jake. He wins this advantage. And the advantage is in the next immunity challenge. It's an obstacle course and the Michelle Fitzgerald puzzle. Jake's advantage here is that he only has to get one sandbag out of the 3 sandbags in. Um, I think we should learn the Michelle Fitzgerald puzzle. It keeps coming up.
Yeah, I feel like we should learn that too. But I also feel like that's a puzzle that would be easy to just like tweak a little bit to make it more difficult or to make it so you can't just memorize the pieces. Because really, all you got to do is like cut 6 dowels into different lengths and then figure it out. Like, it's something that could very easily be manipulated to be like more difficult or easier, as the case may be.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting puzzle. We see people do a similar strategy where they're just like lining it up and then like moving things around to try to get the things to even out. So I thought that was interesting. It just seems like Jake was missing things in this finale episode. Lack of food, maybe, but like here, he misses the key, runs up, and then has to go back down. And then he misses the one puzzle piece off to the side, and so he can't complete the puzzle. So just seems like he's missing things this episode.
I mean, I feel like the point the editors were trying to make is that he's kind of been missing things the whole game. Like, I love him, but he's never really been in the loop. Like, there was one tribal council where he was like, wow, people are playing Survivor. And he's kind of like, yeah, Jake, they have been. So I think it's one of those things where that's kind of the very fitting end to Jake's whole arc, where like he's someone who is trying his hardest, but he's just like he's missing things and he's never going to be a winner either in the immunity challenge or in the game as a whole just because he misses things. So
The attention to detail and lack of food. But because Jake misses the puzzle piece, Austin wins. So good for Austin, another immunity win under his belt. I thought it was very nice that he picked Jake to go with him on the reward portion of this. I was like, "Aw, if he had picked D again for another like date as a reward, I'd be like, yo, we have to vote her out. This is getting annoying." Because then they're just monopolizing the rewards as like mini dates. So I'm glad Austin picked someone else, and it was nice of him to pick Jake, I thought.
yeah, my sister again has not seen anything about this season, but I like explained to her the whole Austin D thing, and she's like, "Wow, I really thought he was going to go hoes before bros." So yeah, I'm also glad that Austin didn't pick D just because, like you said, that would have been annoying. I feel like that would have led to either D or Austin not being in the finale, or I guess in the final 3, I should say, because people would be like, okay, we need to split them up. So
Exactly. So we get to the stake reward. Jake missing things in the challenges, and then here too, it's like, WTF, bro. You're telling Austin that you have a hidden immunity idol here at Final 5 when this is the last time that you could play the idol. I'm like, what the heck? This is so bad.
I do think that in hindsight, knowing Jake's plan was like, oh, I'm going to make people think that I play the idol on myself so that they'll vote for Katura instead. Like, it is smart to blab about it. I'm just not sure where in the timeline he decided that was the plan. Like, did he blab and then be like, oh shoot, I shouldn't have blabbed, like, let me figure out how to use this to my advantage? Or was this always the plan? Just because I do think that, you know, his plan worked pretty well. Because if someone tells you they have an idol in the final five, you're not going to vote for them because you're going to assume that they're going to play the idol in themselves. And so I feel like that could have been a really strategic move. If Katura had voted with Jake, the winner of this season would have been different. So I feel like, I think it definitely felt stupid. I did like scream at the TV when he did that. But in hindsight, knowing what his plan was, I guess I'm not Jake O'Kane, so I cannot tell you the um, when the plan became a plan. But if that was always his plan, I think that's great because it takes advantage of people thinking that he's a dummy. And, you know, it could have been a great time for a big move.
Was this plan in the episode? Because I don't remember seeing this.
Well, he said it in the final tribal council where he was like, I wanted people to vote for Katura so that I could play the idol on her. So, yeah, the plan was in the episode.
I guess it's like lack of more foresight, because I feel like yeah, if this is your idea, you need to make sure everyone's on the same page. Like Katura says after the vote, like, yo, if you told me you're going to play the idol on me, like I wouldn't have flipped my vote, I would have voted with you. So it seems like you need to make the people in your alliance comfortable, or at least aware of what you're thinking. Like you shouldn't just be doing it solo dolo here. And I feel like, I don't know, for me, it seems like the Austin blabbing does seem more like just blabbing for the sake of blabbing, because like we saw previously, Bruce is like, yeah, let me tell Jake because Jake has a big mouth. He's going to go tell people. Then we see Jake telling people about Bruce's idol. So it maybe seems like it's the second option where he starts telling people, then he's like, oh, wait, this is not good. And then is like, okay, maybe they'll vote Katura now and we can idol someone out if she gets the majority of the votes. But I feel like that's a good plan, and we've seen people try to do that before, but you have to let your people know that this is your idea and this is what you want to execute, not just do it without them being aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, Jake said that the reason that he did it the way he did is because he thought it would look better for the jury if Katura was shocked. So, like, he noticed that he should have done it probably, but decided that, you know, jury points was maybe better. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I also think it's super risky here too, because it could have gotten blown up a ton, because like Jake tells Austin about the idol, Austin then tells Dee about the idol, Jake also tells Katura about the idol, Dee tells Julie about the idol. Everyone knows about the idol. Basically, like people could have flipped their votes or switched their votes in a way that it wasn't this wild 2-1-1-1. Like it could have been like a 3-2, and maybe they still vote Jake and Jake plays the idol on Katura, or something wild happens and you get voted out with playing the idol on someone else. But I guess that's the risk you do have to take, especially at Final Five. And same thing like we've been saying all season, I think, okay, you're trying to make a big move, so like kudos for you. The execution might not be there.
Yeah, and I also think even if this move had shaken out exactly the way Jake wanted to, he probably still wouldn't have won just because there were people who were playing more consistent games. So,
Yeah, I think like people are so mad at Katura on the internet about like messing up this vote. Like, oh, Katura should have voted D. They should have voted D out here with the 2-1 split here, which I guess, like, okay, yes, because we see D wins the game. So it makes sense. Like, you should vote her out because she's got the highest winner potential. Maybe Julie could have won also. But now, like, we're seeing, okay, Austin had a lot of fans on the jury. So, sort of at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter maybe if Dee or Julie went here, because Katura and Jake probably are losing no matter what the final three combination is.
yeah, but I think also if you're Katura, maybe you'd rather get to the final three and be a third place finalist than never even have the chance to play the game you wanted to play. I think it's one of those things where we'll never know, because maybe Katura can argue herself better in front of the jury than anyone else can. Because I feel like one thing that was like very consistent throughout this episode was people were really impressed with Katura. Like, she had two different people tell her, like, you are a great speaker, you should be a lawyer. So I feel like maybe that's something that we weren't shown as much as viewers, that Katura, had she gotten to the final three, might have been able to sway people just by, being a good talker. I think she would have a similar story to Jake as far as, being someone who was playing from the bottom a lot of the time, but also she kind of always knew where votes were going. She just didn't always have the social capital to make the votes go her way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I can see both sides, Jake and Katura here. Like Jake saying, I swore on Nana, so obviously I was going to follow through. Why didn't you follow through? But it's also like you don't really know each other. So, like, swearing on a family member could mean a lot to one person and nothing to other people. Like, D is swearing on people and it doesn't really mean anything. So, I can see, like, if you hear that, you're like, yeah, I swear on people and it doesn't mean anything. Why would I trust it? And similar for like Katura's point of view, you should have told me that you're going to play the idol on me. So it just seems like miscommunication here. Bello still having issues. They can't get on the same page about things in order to successfully pull off a move and make a plan here. And so I can see both sides. Like there's miscommunication here.
Yeah, so it is what it is. I feel like you said, the outcome of this vote probably wouldn't have made either Jake or Katura win, but maybe it would have changed so Julie was the winner or Austin was the winner. So
Yeah, and with, like, Julie getting voted out here and Dee staying in the game, I was like, "Okay, it's only 9 o'clock. We basically have 2 more hours to get to the answer that Dee wins, unless a crazy wild upset happens, which would be spicy. Otherwise, you could sort of, like, see that the season was going to end with Dee here."
yeah, I feel like you definitely, D going into this was the number one pick, and then when Julie, who I feel like was number two, went out, and it's kind of like, okay, it's going to be D. And then when she won the final immunity challenge, it was kind of like, okay, like we still have 90 more minutes, but I know the way this ends. So
Speaking of final immunity, they have to do a high step and then stack bowls. If you hit the contraption, your bowls fall. I do want to know, with these challenges, are they adjusted to players like heights? Because I feel like depending like how tall your legs are or like how tall or short you are, it's easier or harder based off of your leg length. Or if you have bigger versus smaller feet, does that affect it? Like with the squares you have to put your feet into? I would want to know if it's adjusted based off of like height and feet size or something. Probably not.
yeah, I would think not, but also I feel like the angles that we get, it's not super easy to tell whether or not it's different for every person.
Yeah. And so Jake ends up breaking the challenge. I thought this was like a little bit odd. It's probably not malicious of Jake, lack of food, frustration after knocking all of his bowls over, but it's weird that you'd be stepping on the challenge because you're supposed to be high stepping it. And he says, like, yeah, I was trying to go fast, but like, I don't know. It was just really weird. He was fully stepping on the challenge on the rope part and not high stepping.
I mean, it could just be like you think that you're putting your foot down someplace and you're actually putting your foot down someplace else. Like, I think it definitely wasn't malicious on Jake's part. I also am kind of like, it seemed weird to me that someone could accidentally break a survivor challenge. Like, I don't know. That just felt bad because it's like Jake not only like knocked out all of his bowls or whatever, but he didn't even have a chance to win. Like, that just felt bad because it's kind of like one of the things that I like about Survivor is like wondering if someone is going to come from behind. So to just have someone like completely disqualified from a challenge, like I would get disqualifying someone from a challenge if they like intentionally hurt like another player or if they intentionally like destroyed the challenge like apparatus. But like since this was neither of those things, like I get why they couldn't just like go in and like fix Jake's challenge because that would mean pausing for everyone else probably. But like felt bad.
Yeah, I feel like I would be so mad at myself for breaking the challenge. Like, a final immunity too, like, this is the biggest one. It would be so frustrating and so sad that you effed up your own chance of making it to the end of the game, so I'd be like I'd be so pissed off at myself.
Yeah, and I mean maybe for Jake it didn't end up mattering as much because he did end up getting to the final three anyway. But man, I feel like this finale episode was really designed to make us feel like bad for Jake. It was strange because they kind of wanted us to make him to think he was stupid with like Jeff literally pointing out that he had missed a puzzle piece. But then also they want us to feel bad for him because like he had the whole scene where he was crying and I was like I'm confused what the edit wants me to think of Jake because I'm like either you want me to feel bad for him or you want me to think he's a dodo. Like it's hard to be both, I feel like. So,
Yeah, it is very interesting, I think, like, the fan perception of Jake is also very interesting. It's wild.
it definitely is wild. So,
But after Jake falls, Dee basically has no competition, so she can go as slow as she wants, make sure she doesn't F up and her bowls don't fall. Just do not mess anything up and you're winning. You're going to final tribal. Like this is a long, hard, frustrating challenge. I guess it's sort of less fun on TV because here when we see such a big blowout and nobody's close to the front runner, it's like okay, the front runner, they could fall and lose all their bowls, and then it's more of a challenge and people are close again. But good for Dee. She never drops. She's amazing at everything. So, like, it's just more boring to watch on TV when there's no competition.
yeah, again, it kind of felt like that same thing of we already know what the conclusion is. Can we just hurry it up?
Yeah. And I'm like, how can I be Dee? Like, she's great at everything she does.
Yeah.
So Dee wins the final immunity challenge, and then we go into the choice for fire making. They really do want us to feel bad for Jake, like you were saying. Jake wants to throw himself into fire. He says he feel like he hasn't done anything this season, and so he's asking Dee to be put into fire to just have the experience to try to do something. Dee and Austin, they want Katura out because they think Katura has played a great game. She would be able to persuade a jury. She's a good talker. Um, and given, I feel like how close Final Tribal Council went that we saw, it is probably good that Dee didn't send Austin into fire to give him more boost, because maybe if Dee did send Austin into fire, maybe Austin could have won the game.
I also feel like the opposite, though. Maybe she sends Austin into fire and he loses, and then she wins a perfect game rather than, almost tying. So I feel like it's also hard. Like, Dee might say that it's a strategic decision that, she decided to keep Austin with her to not give him something extra on the resume. But you do have to wonder, like, how much of that is also like an emotional decision of like, this is the person I played the whole game with. Like, this is the person I really like. So,
Yeah, you can't send boyfriend into fire.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that it's very interesting. People on Reddit have been posting a lot of stats about, like, the fire making challenge, and, like, this is the first time, I guess, yeah, in a while that, like, the person hasn't thrown themselves into fire and then won the game, that kind of thing. Like, it's very interesting, the stats here with the fire making challenge.
Yeah. I just feel like fire making in general, it's a really interesting twist, but also I wish it was a sometimes thing and not an every season thing.
Yeah, maybe you flip a coin, heads, fire making challenge, tails, regular vote.
I feel like that might be going a little too far, but yeah, I
I
just
I think it's interesting too, maybe like the foreshadowing we saw a few weeks ago. We saw Katura briefly say something along the lines of like, "Why can't we just vote someone out at 4?" And so now, like seeing that she goes home at fire, and like she realizes that she messed up at the vote prior, and she's like, "Dang, I should have voted with Jake. I should have voted D out." She realizes she flubbed that vote because now she's in this position of having to go to fire for sure. So, I think it's interesting that they included that in the episode a little bit ago, and then here she's in fire.
Mm-hmm. I also feel like Jake being good at fire is something that has been sprinkled throughout the season. And I thought it was really funny because everyone was like, oh, yeah, Jake's good at fire. I don't want to go against Jake. And then we see this scene again. They seem to really want us to feel bad for Jake because he's like trying to make fire and the man is failing miserably. And I was talking with my sister about it and she was like, well, he's probably just frustrated. And like, none of us do
Mm.
our best work when we're frustrated. Like, he just broke the freaking challenge. He feels really down on himself and the fact that he's done nothing this whole game. Like, yeah, he's not going to be doing his best at fire. So maybe it's for the better that he just decided to take a break and calm down.
Yeah, I feel like yeah, it's gotta be frustrating. I thought it was really cute though that Austin was helping Jake with the fire after he knows, like, yeah, I'm not going to be thrown in, nothing wonky is going to happen. It's like we've seen people help other people in fire before, so I was like, ah, that's nice of Austin.
I didn't really think it was nice of Austin because Austin was just hoping that Katura definitely got out. Like, it was very self-serving of Austin. Like, he wasn't
Yeah,
doing it because, like, oh, Jake is my buddy and I want him to, like, do well. He was doing it because he's like, I need to make sure I don't go against Katura. So I did
self
not think that was cute.
self-serving, but also I'm like, I don't know, helping is always even if you're like have ulterior motives. I'm like, maybe Jake didn't see it as an ulterior motive because they do have like a bromance kind of thing now after the show. Maybe it wasn't really shown on the edit, but they do seem fairly close. So maybe even if there were a little bit of ulterior motives, maybe it did come from a good place.
You're kinder than I am because I don't see it that way.
So fire making, Jake wins, Katura loses. Final tribal council. It was interesting. I feel like Dee wasn't really selling herself that well at first. I was like, this is weird. What is happening? She was really only talking about her good social game a lot, but like, yo, you had strategic moves. And then she was finally bringing up like the Julie and Drew votes. So I was like, okay, this is interesting. It seemed like it started out slow, and it's probably just from like the editing because then exit interviews, they were saying that she did bring it up way earlier, the Julie and Drew big votes, but it wasn't shown like that in the episode.
I feel bad. Like, with the final tribal council, everyone is always like, oh, I came in with an open mind. And I wish that people would say, like, I came in with an open mind between Dee and Austin.
Mm.
Because, like, Kendra said something at the reunion of, like, oh, yeah, I was willing to vote for either of these two. And it's like, there were 3 people. So I wish that, like, people. It felt like there were a lot of questions aimed more at just Dee and Austin. And I feel like Jake must have known, like, at that point, like, oh, I'm not going to get any votes because people are just trying to decide whether they're going to vote for Dee or vote for Austin. But then also, if someone is asked a specific question about, like, you know, this part of your game, like, you get more time to talk and more time to convince people. So
Yeah, I do wonder, like, with the editing, if people did ask Jake questions or more things. Because, yeah, by the end of Final Tribal, it just seemed like Austin and Dee were talking, and I thought it was cute fun that they were really trying to go head to head and sort of trying to, like, undercut one another rather than just being like, "Oh, cutesy, like, if I don't win, I'm glad if you win," but they both do want to win kind of thing, so I was glad that they were like, "Okay, let's pull out the claws and not just be so friendly here."
yeah. The other thing I liked, flashing back to kind of earlier in the episode, was they talked with each of the jury
Mm.
members, and the jury members like gave a little confessional about, like, oh, this is what this person has had to go through. Like, this is these are the things that might make this person a good winner. So I feel like going into Final Tribal, you were kind of prepped to think of all of them as contenders.
Yeah, and it's surprising. I thought this vote was a lot closer than I expected. It ended up being 5-3. It's the closest vote in the new era thus far. Everything after 40 has been a 7-1-0 final tribal council vote. So I'm like, dang, okay. It's very interesting, like the player perception versus the edit and the audience perception. Because from the audience, last week we were like, okay, Austin's drawing dead. He flubbed his advantages and he effed it up so bad. But here we're seeing the player perception is that they really, really like Austin and they respect his game. So I think it is really interesting, like the player versus the edit, the audience's points of views. And I'm like, dang, this is a really close vote. This is fun.
I think that I was talking with another one of my friends who watches Survivor, and her theory is that a lot of times when a male and a female are at Final Tribal Council together, if the woman wins, then everyone is going to be like, oh my God, the man was robbed. And so I feel like when it's a man and a woman against each other at Final Tribal, in order to make people feel as like least negatively as possible towards the woman, they need to show her as like much more deserving than the man was in order for like the internet not to go crazy. So that was like
Mhm.
their theory, like the whole idea of like robbed king, and how a lot of times people are more willing to be like, oh, the man played a much better, flashier game, he should have won, rather than like, oh, the woman played a good game, it was okay that she won.
I think we do see that a lot. And I think there are some stats of like the number of times a woman has beaten 2 men at final tribal council is very, very slim, but the most recent being Marianne at final tribal council, but usually, like, it's not the case if it's, like, 1 woman, 2 men, it's like the woman is, like, the 3rd place GOAT.
Mm-hmm. So that was her thing, and like maybe the reason that we as the audience see D as more competent than the other people do is because we were specifically shown D being more competent, so people wouldn't be salty against her.
Yeah. I thought it was also fun with the final tribal that all 3 of these people are 26 years old, like, to me, Dee and Austin seem younger, and Jake seems older.
Yeah, that who, because we both turn 26 next year, so like, oh, I can't imagine being a millionaire in like 8 months. So
Yeah. So it's like it's wild, like, these are people our age.
yeah.
But the reunion after show, same old, same old. I'm like, I fast forward through it the second, like I'm not gonna watch that more than once kind of thing. They do the lawyer reveal, that was sort of fun. I wish they did it fully at Final Tribal, but Katura does reveal it when she gets eliminated. I thought the preview for next season was cool, and even the preview for the finale was cool. They're using like the contestants' casting tapes of what they submitted for the show, so I thought that was cute.
Yeah, the thing about the reunion show I didn't like is I felt like most of it was about Dee and Austin's showmance, and I'm like, there are other people than just Dee and Austin on this season. Like, I wish we would have gotten like some closure on like the Bruce Katura like rivalry. Could have gotten closure on a lot of other like relationships, backstabbing, but instead they were just like, who saw that Dee and Austin were in love? Like, come on.
Yeah, like I don't know, did they even talk to Bruce about getting voted out with an idol?
I think they just mentioned it as like, oh, people got voted out with an idol. I don't remember them specifically talking to him.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know. By 11 p.m., I was like, this is very long. It is time for bed.
Mood.
So once you get the winner, I was like, I do hope maybe they'll bring it back to the live reunion show in LA so we can get some different answers like, oh, are Dee and Austin still together? Like questions like that would be cool when people have more time to think about the show and their experience. But also, on the other hand, like we've seen revisionist history, people just making up stuff at the after show when it's months later after you see the fan reaction.
Yeah, so I do wish that they did the reunion later. Just it's more fun that way.
Yeah. So I think overall, this was a good season. I'd say the best one of the new era thus far. I had a lot of fun with it. I think if I were to like recommend Survivor seasons, 45 would be one up there, similar to like Heroes versus Villains, David versus Goliath, Millennials versus Gen X. Be like, okay, you want to get into Survivor, new era? I'd say watch 45.
Yeah, I feel like 45 is definitely a good example of what Survivor could be.
Yeah, and I guess what Survivor has now evolved to be in the new era with all of these twists every other vote.
Indeed. I thought it was funny. Someone said, like, oh, one of the reasons that 45 was so good was because there weren't too many unnecessary twists. And I was like, there were so many unnecessary twists, but okay.
They had the same, yeah, split tribal council, fake hourglass, same kind of stuff, but I feel like because we've seen it for the past 5 seasons, maybe now people have gotten used to it, and also it's more refined. Like the hourglass in 41, we were all like, "What the heck? This is so bad," kind of thing, and now it's sort of like had different iterations that it's more acceptable now.
Indeed. So I feel like 45 was a great season. I was excited to have gotten to share all of it with you guys. So,
Yeah, and I think with this, it wraps up our 15th season podcasting because we started at 31, so this is 15.
wow, that makes me feel very old.
Which is wild. Yeah, that's over like 7 years, I think. Yeah, so that's crazy.
Indeed.
But yeah, let us know in the comments down below your thoughts on the finale. Were you happy with the winner? Unhappy with the winner? Um, I guess we're on Survivor hiatus right now, but we are thinking in January, once Peacock's The Traitors comes back out, we'll be talking about that during the Survivor hiatus because you might see some familiar Survivor faces on there, like Sari on last season of The Traitors. We've got Sandra and Parvati on this season. So it should be a fun time, and I'm excited because last season was very good with the traders.
Yeah, last season was great with the traders. I'm excited to see more of our Survivor people like crossing over into other reality TV shows, and it's going to be a good time.
Yeah, so hope you all have happy holidays and a happy new year, and we will see you all in January 2024.